Okay, my name is Jerry Henry, and I have the privilege today to interview James Masson, who is a Vietnam veteran, and we're at the Fairhope Public Library, and I appreciate them doing this project to interview Vietnam veterans to gather a sense of what happened during that time and that period of life. And I too, like Jeff, am a Vietnam veteran, and that's a part of Jeff and my life that is very real in our lives, and it has affected all of our Vietnam veterans. So I have the privilege of interviewing Jeff today. And so Jeff, tell me where you were born.
Well, I was born in Liverpool, England.
Why?
My mother was a war bride. My father was in the Air Force over there. And I came over here when I was about 2 years old, and I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. And from there, went back to England for one summer, spent a great time just running around in Liverpool, which wasn't, I just saw a movie about John Lennon, and I thought, I always get the impression that he grows up in a rough part of Liverpool. He grew up in Woolton, which is really a nice part outside of Liverpool.
Wow.
I was actually in Liverpool in a kind of a rough neighborhood, because I was born in the house, because this war was still going on, so you were brought in by a midwife in those days.
Wow.
So I actually slept in the bed that I was born in while I went back. So then I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and
How many brothers and sisters?
I have two brothers.
Are you?
I'm the oldest.
Oh, so you're the oldest, okay. Did you ever have any kind of real connections with England? I mean, do you ever feel that English kind of sense of who you are, that British
I did
part of you that's a real part of your life?
I did. I guess going to England, when I went over there, I was 9 years, went back for the summer, I was 9 years old, and I spent the whole summer running around with a bunch of little hoodlum kind of kids. And they had all been on rations, so they were my size. So I was running around with kids who were 14, 16 years old, going up to Blackpool and going out to the beaches and all that sort of stuff, getting in a little trouble. And when I came back, all my little friends, because usually in the summertime in the South, we were barefoot and shorts and we were almost black. I came back, I was white, because the sun never shut. I didn't see the sun in Liverpool, I don't think, the whole time I was over there until we were coming down the St. Lawrence Seaway. And all of a sudden, there's the sun. So I was white, and I had a little English accents, and all my friends on the street. If you remember in those days, you grew up in those around 1955, the streets were full of kids. Whenever you grew up, there were kids everywhere. So you had a lot of friends. And they all were going, "You sure are talking funny," because I had acquired a little bit of a British accent on the way back. And then in high school, I went to Catholic schools, and I had a priest. For some reason in high school, we were all getting into existentialism in like the 10th and 11th grade, and I had an
That's some heavy stuff for 10th and 11th grade.
We didn't know what we were talking about. We just stupid
Sounds
stuff.
good anyway.
So I had an Irish priest who really hated British, and he'd been a merchant marine during the war, but he still hated the British, and he used to get in my face in school. And back in those days, they could beat you up in school, because I had a history teacher that taught history by osmosis of the book, where they just hit you upside the head. But he would get in my face and call me a damn limey and all that sort of stuff all the time. So I kind of started feeling like I was an English guy after a while there.
Wow.
And I kind of got into that stoic English attitude, even though I didn't really know what it was about, but I kind of got into that a little bit.
Your sense of military, did your father pass any of that to you? I mean, since he served?
Not really. He was basically, he was a cook in north of Liverpool, or worked in the kitchen there, so he had access to all the food, so he was a hot time guy in those English towns, because he could bring steaks into people's houses and stuff like that. So he wasn't really involved in any wartime, although Liverpool did get bombed, because on the street when I went back that summer, there were still bomb ruins around where I was living and stuff like that. They hadn't, they were still poor, so they couldn't really clean up the ruins, so there were still ruins on the streets there. So they did go through the air raids, and my mother, anytime they heard the sirens go off in Memphis, when they did the testing of the sirens, you could always see her get a little pale.
Because it was still part of her life.
Yeah. It's like when you come back from war.
Yeah.
You hear that crowd, that noise on the street. I remember being on Michigan Avenue a couple of times, and something backfire of a bus or something, and I'm on the concrete next to the fire hydrant, and people are looking at you like you're a fool.
You've been trained.
Yeah, you want to hit the ground as soon as possible, and it takes a while to get over that sort of stuff.
It does. It takes a long time to get over that.
So then I was in Memphis. I went to college there, and then in the summertime, a bunch of us found out we could go up to the steel mills up in Gary and work in the summertime. So we did that for a couple of summers, and then I started hitchhiking. I hitchhiked out to California, and then dropped out of school, hitchhiked out to California, and then was down in Mexico. And I decided I was going to volunteer for the draft because I wanted to experience war for some reason, because I wanted to feel, you know.
Were you a hippie?
Well, in those days there weren't hippies. When we hitchhiked to California, we put on a coat and tie and went.
Is that right? Man.
What was going on?
Did you grow long hair and all that?
No, that was way before that. That was like in 1963 or 64,
So
something
the
like that.
Haight-Ashbury district.
It wasn't happening then. Although I'll tell you later on, when I was in the military, it was happening. Yeah, we hitchhiked out there, and the surfers were the big thing in those days. If you were, they thought you were a surfer, not a hippie. But so I volunteered, and because I only had to do 2 years if you volunteered for the draft, so I thought, well, that's a good way to experience it, because I had a little problem with authority, so I didn't figure I could do too good in a peacetime military. And I found out if I had 18 months left after training, I could get into the Special Forces. So I thought, well, great, I'll get into the Special Forces. I'll learn something to survive better in a war situation. But am I getting ahead here?
No, keep going. You're doing well.
So I went to basic training in Fort Benning.
Okay.
Did the basic training, and I was one of those guys. They'd pull us out. There was about 4 of us, and they tried to get us to sign up for rocket school and helicopter school and officer school and all that sort of stuff. But I could tell off the bat that I wasn't going to be too happy in the military, because in those days, if you had a sergeant that didn't like you, he ruled. I mean, he was in total. He
Sure.
could control your life. If he didn't like you, you were in trouble. And so I just wanted to do the airborne. So I thought, going to airborne, I thought, well, maybe they'll train you a little bit in there about survivor. But when I got out of basic training, I wanted to be in infantry, and I got an MSO of whatever it was, MOS of radio school.
Okay.
And my drill instructors, and I got a stripe coming out of basic training, so I was in E3, I guess. And the drill sergeant, I said, I don't want to be in radio. I want to go to infantry school. And he said, are you out of your mind? I'd cut off my left hand to be on radio, go to radio school. So I went out to Fort Ord to radio school, and at that time they had.
Is this after jump school?
No, this is before. This is like my advanced. You know, most people went to advanced infantry training, so I went to my advanced training was radio school.
Signal Corps.
Signal Corps.
Okay.
So I went out to Fort Ord, and at that time, they had drafted so many, crazy guys like me, and they didn't have enough sergeants to really control us. So it was more of a fraternity kind of place out at Fort Ord,
Wow.
where the drill instructor, we'd be marching. I mean, I've never laughed so hard in the basic training in military, because they had drafted so many crazy guys that I used to go to bed in that bed at nighttime, just my belly would be aching from laughing so hard. And the same thing out of Fort Ord. They were doing things like when we were marching, they'd march us into a wall, and we had some poor drill instructor out there that was from the Philippines. I think he was one of the guys that was in that death march in World War II. He was they brought a lot of Filipinos into our army after that, and they would load he had one of those big high stands where he could stand over us, but he'd get in there like every 3rd or 4th morning, and it'd be full of beer cans and stuff like that. And since he had his spot on his face, people would start going, here's spot. It was just total undiscipline. And
but now the radio guy is so important. He's right there by the commander.
Well,
and when things are happening,
that's
you got to
true.
have your radio man on the spot.
That's true. But being that I was in the airborne, a lot of the radio guys, when I was in radio school, they didn't want to be involved with airborne, because they figured, oh, that's too dangerous and all that sort of stuff.
Would you have to jump with the radio? Well,
No.
you were just in jump school.
Yeah, I just did 5 jumps in jump school,
Yeah.
and they made us do like a Hollywood jump over there around Khartoum. Well, it really wasn't it wasn't really a combat jump. It was just getting us ready for something, I guess. And that was the only jump, and we were jumping into a rice paddy that had dried up. So guys were coming down, and I mean, it was like hitting concrete. In jump school, you could stand up because it was in Fort Benning. It was real warm and all that. And, you could stand up after you landed. Maybe they'd holler at you to fall the way you're supposed to fall, but, But there, we came down fast because there must have been like a hurricane or a typhoon on the coast there, and they had canceled this jump for 3 or 4 days. And they finally said, we're going to do it. And we did it, and it was real strong winds, and the air was kind of cool, so we were coming down pretty hard, and guys were breaking. They had more casualties in that jump.
Breaking their legs.
doing it like some people say intentionally. And I did the proper landing, and I was you know how you land and roll?
Yeah.
I was black and blue on that entire, luckily I did it. Yeah, oh, it was terrible.
Well, tell about your first jump. How did you feel about it?
Well, let me tell you about Fort Ord. When I was in radio school, because it was so unorganized, and they had that stuff where people in the barracks where they would die from spiral meningitis.
Okay.
That hit out there, and I got the flu one time, and I went ahead and went to the infirmary without checking anybody. I just went there, and they put me in the hospital for a day or two. And when I got out, I thought, well, heck, I'm going to go on up to San Francisco. So I went up to San Francisco for about a week, and I came back, and at the company, they had put me as AWOL. Well, I was able to talk my way out of it, being AWOL. I said, no, I was in the hospital the whole time. And that's where I had seen my first hippie was up in San Francisco. I was walking down the street, and comes this guy in a big old tall hat and a vest and a thing, and this was like 1965, I guess. It was just starting. And so I talked my way out at the company commander, and he was pissed because he knew I was guilty, but he couldn't prove it. But they forgot to do it at the base. So when my class graduated, all the guys who were going to Fort Benning got on a plane, and that plane crashed, and they all got killed.
Oh,
my orders at the base were being canceled because they had me as AWOL. So I was at Fort Ord for about a month or two, just hanging around, and I went to the main base, and I said, I was supposed to go to Special Forces because you had to have 18 months left to get into Special Forces. And they said, dude, you're AWOL. And I said, no, I'm not. I've been here the whole time. So then the next day I was off to Fort Benning. But luckily, if I wouldn't be sitting here. One of the many times that I, come close to death, I would have died in that plane crash. So in Fort Benning, I was at Fort Ord, so I was playing basketball all the time. So I was in really good shape. So I went to jump school. It was a breeze for me. It was no big deal. And you went to jump school. In those days, I went through in whatever it was. It was still tough in the military. They could beat you up.
You remember those black hats coming down off the mountain? They'd come off the side and start getting in your face.
Oh, yeah, they get into your face, and they come in the nighttime with those cans and wake you up and play that your boots you're dead and your boot risers or whatever and all that sort of stuff. And we had guys that would actually break down. I mean, they broke guys. They would fall down on the ground and start crying and stuff like that. It was bizarre. My upbringing, I kind of had a rough upbringing. I had kind of a tough father, so I was used to that mental abuse style. Yeah, right. So it didn't bother me too much. But they had guys who were crying and breaking down and all kind of stuff. We even had a guy in like a guy who, the short tower, the 34-foot tower. You had guys that would panic jumping out of that. Now, I was afraid of heights, so that was one of the reasons.
I was afraid of heights, too.
I thought that would cure me doing the jump school stuff. And the thing that got me was a 300-foot tower, where they had harass you the whole time going up. They'd stop it, and you're going to die, and that.
And then you had to unhook while you were up there.
Yeah, and it was real scary, and they were tormenting you, all that sort of stuff. Did they take you through where they do the parachutes? They put it together, and they had all those toothless guys in there.
That's kind of scary.
And they would tell you, these guys don't know what they're doing. Yeah, right. Yeah. These guys, some of them get it together right, and some don't. You might die on it. So my first jump, luckily, I was second out the door. I liked second out the door because
was it a 119?
It was a flying boxcar. Yeah, the 119. Yeah, and I looked out the door, and it just looked so beautiful. That green countryside out there, I had no problem with it. And when you look back, you see like crazed looks on everybody's faces behind you because everybody's panic-stricken. So my jump going out wasn't bad. And the first jump, I tried to do it like they teach you. You're supposed to put your hands on the door and all that. That's not how it goes. It's just running out the door. So we did the 5 jumps, and the second one, I guess I was at your first, and you're at the back. And the back was a lot worse. I like being close to going out the front. And those flying boxcars, actually, they were so noisy and bumpy, you wanted to jump out of them. You didn't want to be in that plane because that was so bad. I think they had reservists
for pilots.
I know.
Just get me up high enough I can jump out.
Yeah, get me out of this thing. So then so that was my jump school. And then from jump school...
Did you ever jump out of a 141?
No. I did a 130 in Vietnam.
Okay.
And so when I got out of jump school, I think I got like a 3-week leave or something like that to go home. And then from there I went up to New York. I think it was Fort Dix or something like that.
That's where I left from, Fort Dix.
Fort Dix.
I think it's McGuire or McCord.
Something, I
Air Force
forget.
Base there at Fort Dix, yeah.
But it was still all those crazy guys up there. It was still, it's like, I was in a fraternity in college, so it was like Animal House guys who had gone into the military at that time. It was still, a lot of draftees who were kind of nutty and all. And I remember up there at Fort Dix, there was one guy who was like 30, which was an old guy in those days, and he was a little crazy because he'd come back at 30 to be in the military, to go to Vietnam. And I remember him running around with a 38 chasing some black guy out there. I don't know, it was crazy.
It was crazy. Well, now tell me this. So you left from Fort Dix.
Landed in Alaska.
Okay.
Refueled in Alaska.
Refueled in Alaska.
Which was unbelievable because I don't know where it was, but they cleared a mountain range and they put the plane into a dive going down to get down to the runway. And you get off the plane, we got off the plane in Alaska, and it was kind of funny walking around the airport there because there's guys. It's like the Old West. There was guys with holsters and revolvers, Indians or Eskimos.
Well, we had our summer uniforms on, and it was cold up there.
It was cold, right?
Yeah.
It was cold. It was cold. And then I guess we went on and we landed. I think we refueled in Japan too, and then down to north of Saigon there. And boy, when that door opened and you went out, it was like walking into an oven. It was so unbelievably hot.
Remember the malaria pills and all that?
Malaria pills? I really didn't take malaria pills. I'm not one of those guys.
Well, I did. I took them, but
no, I'd heard those rumors about, you get something if you take malaria pills.
Yes.
For the rest of your life, you'll be affected. So, and I'm a person that doesn't, like my wife, I use her as mosquito repellent. They don't bite me, they'll get her. So luckily, I'm not bothered by mosquitoes too much.
Well, now, you landed in
Tonsanut, I guess.
Tonsanut.
Yeah.
And the way it was with me, when we got off, this other group was getting back on the plane and leaving.
I don't remember that. Now, you have to remember, this was like 1965.
Yeah, so you were early group.
This was early. So things weren't organized, and there weren't barracks and all that kind of stuff like that. We were just in tents and stuff like that, and we just marched us out to some place, and we immediately I got sent up to Fan Ring. At that time, I was into the 101st Brigade. They hadn't sent the whole division over yet. It was just the 1st Brigade, and we were at Fan Ring, and it was like a.
Well, tell them where Fan Ring was located.
It's probably about 150 miles north of Saigon on the coast there, and. Middle of the country, I guess you would say. Like the beginning of this, on the coast, but going to the Central Highlands. And when we got there, it was just a bunch of tents on a rice paddy with just rat infested.
Yeah.
And I guess this is when you're in the military, you have to start getting into black humor to stay alive, or keep your mental facilities in good sense. And what they would do there, we went there before we got sent to it was kind of like a in-between place before you got sent to the forward area. It was their back, at that time it was their back, what do you call it, back area?
That sounds good.
Rear area. So we did like a week of acclimating there where we did some training and stuff like that. But at nighttime, they'd set traps for the rats because they were running all over you and jumping on everything. Because it was right on a rice paddy field. And we were in big tents, so nothing was stopping the rats from coming in and all that. But in the morning, they would dump the rats they caught in gasoline and throw them into a fire and watch them run on fire, run away. So from there...
Well, I remember the lizards. Did you have lizards? I mean, lizards would crawl all over you.
I kind of remember. I don't remember them too much, but...
I was happy to have the lizards because...
They get the mosquitoes, yeah, right.
The mosquitoes so bad.
Well, everybody... once you got up to the forward area, people had adopted weird animals, and you got there was guys with monkeys and parrots, and so we had a dog for a while, and so I got sent up to Tuiwa. That was where we were up there. Our forward base was up there.
You know what Tuiwa means?
No.
Stinky flower.
Really?
Yeah, Tuiwa.
No, I did not know that.
So now you know.
I know that. Well, at that time, we were securing the coast. I guess you would say that's what we were doing. They didn't have the air base there then because I went through there later on, and they had a giant air base there.
Yeah, when I was there, it was it'd been an Air Force base, and then they turned it over to the Army, so it was a helicopter Mohawk kind of facility.
Well, same with Fan Ring. When I first went there, I think they were just building an air base, and when I went back later on, there was a giant air base there with barracks and all kind of stuff. It was roads, light streets, flush toilets, so and even showers, which is
that was a blessing.
That was a blessing. And so anyway, I went up to Tuiwa, and out of Tuiwa, I was there for about 5 months. And what I was on radio relays. And radio relays is where they put you on a mountain somewhere or a hill, I guess you call it hills, and then the operations would be going on somewhere around by you, kind of like. So you would transmit the messages back to the forward base camp. And that's what I did most of the time. And at Tuwa, there was some beautiful mountains or hills there, whatever they call those things.
Place, yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden there's rice paddies, and all of a sudden there's like a whole pile of rocks that just go straight up.
Yeah.
So we'd be on top of those. But even on top of those, you would think you'd be safe. We had the home guard, I guess you'd call us some home guard folks. As our guard, we had little boys, with M1s and a couple of old guys that had been with the French in World War II. And we had one old fella who had jumped, and I'd gotten kind of to know him pretty good, talking to him, and he got killed walking down one day on the mountain. Can you imagine? He'd been with the French. He had survived that whole Dien Phem Bu thing with the French jumping into that thing.
All those were massacred.
All that sort. They got killed. A lot of them got killed there. Came back, was in the home guard fighting the Viet Cong around Tuiwa there, and then he got hit going down and got killed there.
Well, let me ask you, did y'all have rocket attacks and mortar?
We had mortar attacks and grenade attacks, and we get probed a lot.
How did you feel? I mean, describe your feelings.
I didn't like, you don't like.
You remember that?
You hate that. Yeah, right. You hate that sound because. Well, I also went out on patrol. I went out with LRPs, long-range reconnaissance patrol. They needed a radio operator. And
sure, I reckon you depended on your radio operator.
So I'd go out with them, and I never mind. And one of the things people don't know about Vietnam is, to me, the guys that are really the hero guys are in World War II, because in Vietnam, when I went over, I think there was like 18 guys a week that got, or 18 guys a day or something like that got killed. In World War II, it was 300 guys, average 300 men a day, for over 3 years getting killed, and it was half the population. So those guys. But what's different is, in Vietnam, more people got killed by rifle fire than any other war except the old wars where they would do that sort of stuff, which is what if I was going to get killed, that's the way I would want to. I want to have somebody who is aiming at me trying to kill me, not somebody lobbing mortars in, which he doesn't know where they're going, it's just bad luck. So that's what I hated about mortar attacks. So you're just waiting there and there's nothing you can do about it. They're just raining down on you.
Cover up. Hopefully it's not coming your way.
So I hated those things. So Tuiwa was great. We went on, I got to go, we also did...
well, tell me this. Describe your first rocket attack and describe your first probe.
Okay. Well, let's see. In Tuiwa, our first thing in Tuiwa on that hill that I was talking about, actually it wasn't a rocket attack, it was a grenade attack. They'd come up the side of the hill and they were throwing grenades at us like that. So we didn't have the whistling stuff, but yeah, right. We didn't have that. But it's scary when the first things start going on you. Now I was a little suicidal in those days. I went to Vietnam figuring I was going to die, and I was ready to do it. I didn't, I went for the adventure.
How old were you then?
I was old. I was probably 20. I think I turned 21 maybe in jump school, I think. So I was an old guy, most of the guys.
A lot of guys were 18.
Yeah, a lot of guys are 18, 19 years old. But there were still a lot of older guys with me. And in the group I was with, most of us had been around for a while before we went to the service. And Tuiwa was a nice little village, but we'd go out into the valley out there with our relays too. We didn't just do that.
You remember there's a place outside too.
I wish there was one place I can remember that we went to. There was a little village where we had a radio thing set up there, and you're in a straw hut, and they had somewhere or another they had food for us, and you're sitting there eating. There's a pig under the table, and there's chickens with their heads chopped off right on the table next to you while you're eating. So, but I really don't know where that was, because a lot of these relays, when I went there, we got sent out on places that I don't know where we were. We were just, I might have been centered in Tuiwa for 4 months, and then we went out, to different places, and also got to do radio relays in those fact planes. If we had a alert group that got too far out and didn't have radio communications, we'd jump into one of the little two-seater facts to reestablish communication with those. And those pilots were a little nutty.
Yeah, they were crazy.
I was with one, and he says, hey, take the stick. And he's holding his camera out the window, and I'm thinking, what the hell's he doing? I swear within a half a mile, a B-52 strike went right through the jungle there. And we were only about 100 feet up plus the thing. You could almost feel the vibrations
Now,
of
was
the
this
thing.
an Army plane or
It was
CIA plane or?
no, it was just a fact plane. I guess they were Army, I suppose. Yeah, they were just like a Piper Cub.
Okay.
It was a little Piper
Like a
Cub.
bird dog?
Yeah, it was a bird dog. You had the one guy in the front and the one in the back.
Yeah.
The old ones, not those fancy ones, but the old ones that were from World War II, probably.
Yeah, they probably rare old.
Yeah. And I was
But they could hover a long time.
They hovered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they were for, because we'd go out there to establish with a reconnaissance patrol that got into out of radio communication. So I was with one time, and he thought he saw something down there, and he had one of those spiral things coming down to the canopy. I almost hit the jungle coming down. So Tuiwa was an interesting place. I liked it a lot, and then we went up to from Tuiwa.
Well, let me ask you this now. I know one time we were covering a chopper. A chopper had gone down, and we were covering that chopper. We were out so exposed, and the VC had the high ground, and I knew we weren't going to make it. And I had that sinking feeling. I'm gonna get killed here. Nobody's gonna know where I am.
How many were you?
It was about 10 of us covering this chopper.
Yeah, when you're in a small group, it's scary.
For some reason, the VC never hit us. Oh, we were totally exposed. But those feelings I had were like, I'm never going to make it back.
Well,
Did you ever encounter any of those kind of?
I did. We were under fire a lot because we were sitting targets a lot of the times, and then we'd do little patrols out from our place. And I used that fear. I kind of like, I enjoyed that fear.
Gave you a high?
It did kind of like, I like that.
Gave you a rush.
Rush, yeah, I like that thing. I mean, you're scared, but you have to use the fear. Because I was with guys where, that you'd get hit, and you'd look over at the foxhole next to you, and all you saw was a rifle sticking up with a guy shooting up in the air. And that's why an offense works, because you scare guys who are in defense to do stuff like that, and you can just walk in and kill them pretty much. So you have to stick your head up there with those bullets whistling by and start shooting back, or you're going to be dead. That's why
you got to put it back on.
You got to put it back on them, or you're dead. Because the offense that's how an offense works. You try to get guys scared so that they don't get up and start shooting back, and then you can get in there. That's why an offense works. But yeah, so I know what you're talking about. So Tuiwa was relatively a safe area. It was on the coast there, and we would go into the central, up into the hills a little bit up in there. And but then out of Tuiwa, I went up to Kontum. So we were right on the border, and with Laos and Cambodia, and the Ho Chi Minh Trail was there. And I went on this one relay, and at nighttime there you could hear the trucks going down the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Wow,
which was kind of weird, because you get a call on the radio and say, do you have any people at so and so location? You say no, and then all of a sudden that would just blow the hell up out there, and then about 2 hours later, here come them trucks again. They start moving again. So the people that really I had admiration for was the North Vietnamese, because
I have tremendous admiration.
Yeah, because what we did to them is unbelievable. I mean, we just put all kind of firepower on them. And
let me interject. I've seen them put napalm and CPU units on a hill, and we think we're going to take this thing. We'd go out there, and they would come out of those holes with their ears bleeding.
Yeah, from the concussions.
AK-47 in black pajamas, and they lay down a base of fire, and I thought, wow, why didn't these guys give up?
I know.
So I have admiration.
I do too. I mean, I don't know how. Obviously, we're true believers, and I suppose that's why they succeeded in the end. Because mostly the South Vietnamese, which I love the South Vietnamese, I feel sorry for them under communist domination, because they were free, happy people, and they had left North Vietnam because they didn't want to be under that totalitarian government. They really didn't want to do it, but at the same time, they liked their Hondas and radios, and they
didn't have anywhere near the intensity.
No, they did not have. They didn't have to go through the hard times that they did. So, you had to be a true believer to be that, and I suppose the true believer is always going to win in the end. I suppose that's what we're finding out nowadays.
Yeah.
And I guess I should get more of those war story things going on. So we went up to Kontum, and what was interesting about the outfit I was in, we really didn't have supervision. We pretty much were on our own. I had a captain that was our guy, and the first time I ever really saw him was, I think, at Kontum going out there. And he, for some reason, wanted to go out with us, and we landed on this hill. It was in high elephant grass. And there was punji sticks all over the place, and the only one, you know, we're all jumping out of the helicopter. Everybody's jumping out of the helicopters into it. I mean, it was probably I don't know how many guys were jumping out. He was the only one that got a punji stick through his leg, so he was in and out for the first time.
Well, he got a Purple Heart probably.
Yeah, right. He got Purple Heart, and so that was one of the relays that were right up there. And Kon was one of those real. That was the major route for the North Vietnamese.
So you had to come out of a helicopter with that radio in your back?
No. We had bigger radios. We would get into a hill. We took gasoline. We took generators. We had big radios. We'd dig a foxhole. We'd dig a hole for our radios. I should have brought pictures for you. And then we would set up antennas that were like 10 feet tall. And then we would transmit from that hill to the rear area, kind of like to the
artillery guys.
We always had the artillery guys, and when you're talking about stuff whistling in on you,
friendly fire kills as much as enemy fire.
But at nighttime, we always had the harassment where they dropped two 105s in, and you could hear those two 105s coming on the perimeter, and that was always kind of a secure feeling. I thought I liked that to the 105s coming in. Because that was our guys. 105s were the American guys, just giving us kind of a perimeter, laying down around our perimeter in case people were sneaking in at nighttime. And they could always shoot the bigger flares, because the flares at nighttime.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that you really get in a combat situation, you know, is when you get woken up, you're laying in a foxhole, and you're in another world, and then all of a sudden the shooting starts. And you're going, time out, I'm not quite ready right now, but you have to get up and go. And you get up, and there's tracers, and there's flares in the air.
And you remember the tracers, where we always knew if it was North Vietnamese, it was green tracers. If it was Viet Cong, it was red tracers.
Isn't that weird how that, I never quite understand why everybody decided to use their own colors.
Well, I think what happened is,
so they wouldn't shoot each other, I guess.
The green tracers were from the communist supplies they got from China, whereas the Viet Cong had red tracers that they'd steal from the Americans.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
That's the way I heard it anyway.
Well, most of the time, like when I was at Tuiwai, I went out on alert, a long-range reconnaissance patrol with the guys, and all we did is we landed in some helicopters. We hiked over to this village to watch it, to see if because we were on the coast then. We're getting confused here, because Kon Tum is way inland and Tuiwai is on the coast. And we were checking to see if the North Vietnamese had made it into these villages at nighttime. So we were watching the village at nighttime just to see if they were making contact with the local Viet Cong at nighttime, which is two different armies. You know, I'm not two different armies, but two. Viet Cong were the local people, and North Vietnamese were the hard-trained North Vietnamese army that was coming down from the north, and regiment sizes. And I know the Viet Cong had, you know, large groups too, but they were more scattered and dispersed. But when you went against the North Vietnamese, there was a good chance you might be going against 1,000 guys. When you got put on a hill there, you didn't know if you were going to get hit by 10 guys, 100 guys, or 1,000 guys coming in on you at nighttime. Sure. And that's one of the things at nighttime I always found, because we'd set out claymores and trip flares and things like that. And when those things start going off at nighttime,
boy, that's scary.
It's scary at nighttime, especially with those shadows jumping around out there with the flares and all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of an interesting thing because you can't see.
Yeah. Daytime
you don't mind because you got visibility. You can see where things are coming at you and stuff like that.
Well, did you lose any friends?
Well, what happened with us was we did, but what happened with us is we would go out as a team of 4, and we had different kind of security. Sometimes we'd have local guys. Sometimes we'd have there were 3 battalions, and each battalion we might supply a couple of guys for security for us. So we'd get to know them a little bit, but not a lot. They weren't part of our core. Sometimes we'd have one time we had special forces, the mountain yard guys come in for security, and sometimes
tell them who the mountain yards were.
They were the special forces had, I think they were called A-teams, and the A-team would go into a village, and these were back in the days when the special forces guys weren't. I was down in Key West about 10 or 15 years ago, and the guys down there now are like all Arnold Schwarzenegger guys. Back in those days, they were like old guys. Now, they weren't old guys, but they weren't in shape. I mean, they were in shape, but to us, they were old. They were probably in their 30s, and they weren't the muscle built. They were more wiry kind of guys.
Skinny dudes.
Yeah, and they would go out. One time, we had a group of them, and there were 2 special forces guys, and he had like 30 mountain yards, I guess, with him, and that was our security at one location. And
the Montagnards were the indigenous
they
people.
were like Indians.
Yeah, they really were.
They're like Indians.
Yeah, they were different from the Vietnamese.
Oh yeah, the Vietnamese were considered the high class, and these people were up in the hills, living in really primitive villages.
They had bows and arrows.
Bows and arrows, and,
Yeah.
and you know, they were like primitive culture.
Well, did you ever see elephants over there?
I didn't. I saw a dead tiger.
Well,
but I
one
never-
other thing, we ran into cobras and what we didn't know what it was, so we called it a three-step viper. If the three-step viper hit you, you took 3 steps.
You were dead, huh?
gone.
Yeah.
So did you guys ever run into those in the jungle?
One time, the worst thing I happened to me, I was, I forget what I was, but we were in rice paddies, and I was walking across the top of the dike, and all of a sudden the dike was moving. And I thought, what the hell is that? And all of a sudden I could see there, I just stepped on a whole pod of snakes that were just, I'd crossed their path. And obviously they didn't bite me, but it's kind of weird to step on a whole group of snakes.
Well, let me tell you one of my stories. We had a point man that was crawling through some of this jungle, and he went face to face with a cobra.
Oh, geez.
I mean, full-fledged. And he stood off that cobra, and it took him about 12 minutes. Finally, the cobra moved on. But that guy he was never the same. He was neurotic from that point on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to face a VC. It's another thing to stare down a cobra,
right.
man.
Oh, yeah.
And he was
Oh yeah,
emotionally.
I know what you're talking
after
about. Because there's places where you're sleeping and you got those things with the little claws. You know, they're all over you. I mean, not all over you, but they're all around you, kind of like the centipedes, right? Not
Yeah.
centipedes, but whatever those things that sting you. Yeah. The local stuff that you can die from. There's a lot of stuff you can die from besides bullets. Let's put it that way.
All right, well, I interrupted your story. Go back to your story.
So there was one when we're talking about the security. That's who we'd have. So a lot of times you wouldn't know the guys.
About losing a buddy.
You might get an attack on one end of the perimeter. What we'd do, we'd get on a hill, and we might have 4 bunkers around, and we'd be in the center, kind of like with the radios. And sometimes you might, depends on where you were. Sometimes we got sent out, and we were the decoys, where they would just throw you out for like a day or two to make people take the North Vietnamese think that the movement was going to be that way, because they were listening to our radios, obviously. So they'd send you out for a day or two, and you would have no security. You'd be sitting on a hill by yourself, where the real stuff was going on the other side of the other direction. So that was scary, because if you got hit, then you were dead. But so we had different security, and when those guys would get killed, you really didn't know them that well. You get a probe, and a couple of guys would get killed. I remember one time I was at one place, and this bunker got hit by a rocket, and I had a bag full of grenades, because we were really vulnerable. I mean, I'm talking, our perimeter was spread out. It was really spread out, because you just couldn't make a real perimeter, because you're only going to be there for maybe 2 weeks. And so if they really wanted to get us, they could, we'd be wiped out if they ever put a major attack on us. But this one bunker got hit by a rocket, and I went flying over there. And on the way over there, you could hear the 2 different kind of bullets. They had a heavy machine gun up on the hill next to us, and then the light machine guns. I don't know if you got the big, like a 50 caliber. You can really tell the difference, because when it goes by, as opposed to. So those things were flying at me while I was running to this bunker, and I got there, and I looked down. This is another story about the M16 and its jamming. I got there, and 2 of the guys were in really bad shape, because it was a rocket. And when I looked out, I saw about 10 guys coming up the hill, and luckily we were on a hill, so I could just lob grenades down there. But I came up because I saw another guy, and then the other guy was loading his rocket up to hit the bunker again. And when I came up with my M16, I was able to get the shot off, and I got him so that the rocket went flying up that way.
Wow.
But it jammed. I got 1 bullet off, and I got 1 lucky hit.
Well, they kept telling us they don't jam.
Yeah, they did. Mine jammed a couple of times. But luckily, I always carried a bag of grenades whenever something like that happened, because we would take a whole box of grenades out with us. And I love the M79, too. I love the M79. Yeah,
like shooting a shotgun.
We had shotgun shells with us on the M79. And because we could get overrun real easily. So I could just lob the grenades down the hill, luckily, and were able to counter the attack. But I didn't even know the 2 guys that got taken off and were really in bad shape, because they were, I think, from the what we had.
Did they call
3
in
brigades
to take them out?
Oh yeah, they had to take them out. They were probably half dead. we had the 50 Deuce, the 132nd, the 2nd 32nd, which are the brigades, and they would supply maybe up a squad sometimes with us for security. And but one time, I got to go to a special forces place for a radio thing, and my God, I don't know how those people could attack a special forces place, because this place it had like
wire out?
It had like 200 feet of barbed wire. It must have had 1,000 claymore mines around, because they could blow whole sections. They could, and we were so impressed that we just camped outside the. They had they had a berms around their main place, so we just threw a tent. We didn't even dig foxholes because we thought, what kind of idiots would attack a place like this? And so we were outside the perimeter, outside their thing, and inside their perimeter, they had a concrete bunker that was like a Quonset hut, except closed on both sides. So if they were getting overrun, they could jump into that thing and just call whatever they wanted into on
bring
them.
in that.
They could almost have a B-52 strike in there. It was so thick.
Man.
It was unbelievable. And so it's kind of fun being in a special forces camp like that.
Well,
But the trouble was they had their guys, it was like probably 5 to 10 special forces guys. But the other guys were all no, they were South Vietnamese Army guys.
Oh, okay.
So that was the trouble, because they always were saying, this is a good place, but
they'll run.
If one of these guys is hooked up with them, we're finished.
Yeah, sure.
He could put us out. So that was fun. But later on, I was up in one of those fax planes, and we went by a river where there was a special force camp, and I was watching. They were attacking it, and I was watching the F-4s come in.
Wow, that's awesome.
I'm thinking, what a suicide mission to be told to go attack one of these places.
Daylight?
This was daylight.
Wow, that
which
was
is really
a rare
cool
thing.
because you see F-4s when you're on the ground and they come in and they're dropping that napalm. It's a whole different thing when you're up in the air and watching. It's like seeing a fish swim in water. You realize the air is like a density of water. It's like they were like floating down and coming up. It was a strange view of a fighter plane going into a thing like that.
It's so much. They brought so much firepower.
Oh yeah, right.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let me.
I got another story.
All right, go ahead.
I was at another place, a special forces camp. You think, oh, nobody's going to attack you there. And then I was at a fire base. A fire base is 105 millimeters. I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. They put us on the perimeter out there, and I thought, who's going to attack a fire base?
Really?
You'd be an idiot. And so we had our antennas up, and we were on the perimeter, and part of our deal was we were supposed to watch this one section. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing the bullets whistling by my ears, and I jumped in the foxhole. They lowered those our antennas were no taller, a little bit taller than that right there. They lowered those 105s and blew our antennas in half.
Wow.
That's
close stuff.
And you hear a 105, the bang.
Yeah.
Because there was a little hill in front of us. And that noise from that bang was so quick. It was just unbelievable.
Really? That's coming close,
It was close. Close. I think that was the same place where I went out on a patrol one time, and we went across a hill that must have been an R&R for North Vietnamese. It was kind of a cool place. They had about 50 little they had like 2 poles with a floor and a straw hut, and there must have been like 50 of them on the side of this hill.
Wow.
They obviously,
so it was an R&R.
I presume it was R&R. And then we ended up down by a stream somewhere, and we were so stupid. It was a beautiful place with a stream going through with these gigantic boulders going up, and it was one of those places that later on in life you go, that's the place where you'd be laying on those rocks dead. Yeah. Because we all took our clothes, because it's so hot, and you're in those, your clothes are just, they can stand up with the grease from your body from sweating. And we jumped into the water there. There's little pools, and we were swimming around in that. And then all of a sudden, luckily, we realized there's like 1,000 leeches headed for us, so we got out and got to our guns real quick. But we did the most stupidest thing in the world, just putting our weapons down and jumping in this pool. We were in a little gully, kind of like, with that sort of stuff.
Well, now, two other things I'll ask you. When you got to be a 2-digit midget, do you know you were just going to be there a year and then take a...
I knew I was going to be a year.
When you got to be a 2-digit midget...
Well, I'm not sure your slang on that, but when I was short, I had to...
Short, okay.
Yeah, right. When I was
you got
short,
down below 100 days.
Oh, yeah,
2-digit
100 days, I was still not thinking I was going to make it in 100 days. But when I got short a couple of weeks, I extended for 3 or 4 weeks. So when you came back to the States, if you had less than 3 months in service, you would get discharged. If you came back with more than 90 days, they'd reassign you. So I extended for a couple of weeks so when I got back I could get discharged. I only did 21 months in the service, actually. So, but that last couple of weeks I was going back to the rear to get classes and stuff like that. But that was it. So we were in Khartoum. And we were all over the place. We were in Khartoum, and then we came back. I did a convoy from Khartoum all the way down to Phan Rang.
Wow.
They were trying to prove that it was the safest. The road was safe.
Or no, it wasn't QL1.
I don't know what it was, but it was a road. We came down and then cut across the center of the country and then came down the coast. And they were trying to prove that you could do a convoy without any trouble. Obviously, we couldn't because they were.
Did y'all get hit?
We got hit, and there were gunships and all kind of stuff all the time. And one of the things that happened to us on that convoy was we had what we called Old 59, which I think was a half-ton, or a quarter-ton or three-quarter-ton truck or something like that. The rest of everybody else flew. They took everybody else on 130s down there. And that's where, jumping back, I'm jumping all over the place. But in Khartoum is where we did the jump out of 130s. That's where I did. That's where I jumped out of 130.
Did you get Vietnamese jump wings from that, or they didn't give you any of
I
that?
didn't pay too much attention to that.
I tried to get Vietnamese jump wings, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
The only outfit that did a combat jump was the 173rd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ours was just they made us all jump, but it wasn't a combat jump. It was just getting us ready. They probably were testing to see if we did a jump, if we could do a combat jump, I suppose. Westmoreland had been the head of the 101st in the state, so we were like his pet project. Westmoreland would always come in and give,
Sure.
good talks to us and all that sort of stuff. He was an impressive guy. And when I wasn't on relays, we would be in the forward base command centers too. So you would see the plans, and you had the maps all set out there, and Westmoreland would come in and try to figure out who's doing what and all that sort of stuff like that. So we got to see him. But luckily, as a radio operator that I wasn't with a regular infantry outfit. I was I got to be all kind of things. I got to do the fax, got the relays, I got to go out with the LERPs.
Yeah.
One time I was a radio operator for this is almost like a fantasy, an LSD fantasy thing. But I got to be a radio operator for a general, and they were trying to prove, I think we were up around July, and they were trying to prove that Highway 101 was open. You're not going to believe this is so strange. So I was this general, and they flew in all the generals from all over the place. We all landed in this big rice paddy, and we went up there, and they had this little village where all these little villagers were standing out there, and they're all, these are people that haven't seen anything in their lives, And all of a sudden, there's a band.
A band show.
There's like a military band.
Wow.
There's a ribbon on the highway. There's a Jeep with clowns in it.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, they start laying mortars on it. So everybody, all the generals and the guys in the band with their trombones and everything are running for their lives. They have never seen combat, most of these dudes. So they were running for their lives. They were, because, they're special in the military that people don't realize it. But, God, if I was a young guy now, I'd definitely go in the military because there's so many things you can do. There's the entertainment branch, and basic training, we had a guy who went off to be an actor. There's the band. A lot of people are in band stuff. There's so many different things you can do.
I think we had, in the 82nd, we had a glee club.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
We call them the Tweety Birds.
But they didn't have to do anything else. That's all they did.
They just sang.
Yeah, they just sang. So it's kind of weird. There's so many variety of things you can do.
Well, did you take an R&R?
Oh, yeah, I took 2 R&Rs.
Where'd you go?
I went to Yokohama and to Kuala Lumpur.
Where's that?
In Malaysia.
Oh, okay.
I always wanted to go to Bangkok, but I didn't get lucky to go there.
I got to go to Bangkok.
Yeah.
I got to go to Bangkok and Hawaii.
Oh, wow. That's a long trip to Hawaii.
It is. It was.
So, yeah, the only place I wanted to go was either Hong Kong or Bangkok. It was kind of a short things. And it's always strange because when I went to Japan, you're out, basically we were living in a hole in the ground for like 5 or 6 months. And, you forgot what a toilet and a shower and all that sort of stuff is. And all of a sudden, I'm flying to Japan, and what was the strangest thing, first of all, was I was on a plane. I got to ride, because you got to work, when you get R&R, you got to work your own way to get there. And I got a ride with a C-130 that had it was loaded with coffins. I was sleeping on the C-130 on top of the coffins because they had them piled up there. But anyway, when I got to Japan, there were snowflakes, and there were flush toilets, and showers, and
different.
So
Let me tell you,
it's so strange to come out of a situation where one day, you're in a hole in the ground,
And
and the next day you're in a hotel and there's snowing, and
it's awesome.
it's a real strange thing. And a lot of people can't adjust to it, and it's a funny thing.
I met my wife. My wife flew over to Bangkok, and so we got to spend 10 days in Bangkok.
Wow.
And then when I went to Hawaii, she met me there in Hawaii. So it was great.
Wow.
And when you
How old were
don't
you?
know if you ever see each other again.
How old were you?
23.
Huh.
If you don't know if you ever see each other again, that is such a special thing.
That's got to be
But
rough.
besides seeing my wife, let me tell you what I craved was scrambled eggs. Because, man, in Vietnam, all we had was powdered eggs. And you can put mustard and ketchup, and you can salt them down, but they still taste like powdered eggs.
Well, I was on sea rations a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And one time we did get, the new thing was that...
Now, sea rations looks like somebody threw up in a can and put a top over it.
Well, you know what? The lifer and beans. I love the lifer and beans.
And the chocolate. The chocolate and the toilet paper.
I could trade my fruit cocktail and pound cake for lima and beans, lifer and beans, I think they call it, ham and beans or something like that, because I really like that. And so I could trade that all the time because everybody wanted the fruit cocktail and the pound cake. But yeah, I think the one when I think I was in Fanthiette, and Fanthiette was way down there. It was I think it was a big burial ground for the French. There was a big French cemetery there, and it's on the coast, and it was one of the more sophisticated towns we're in. There was actually a little restaurant there, or it was a village, but it was a town. You saw those towns in Vietnam. They're like small little towns.
Fishing villages.
Yeah. But there was a guy there, a restaurant guy who must have been part French or something. He had an air-conditioned restaurant.
Wow.
But even in the air-conditioned restaurant, while you're sitting in there, in the rafters, there's rats running through the rafters, and you're eating the bread.
Or the countryside.
And you're eating the bread, the rolls, and you go, oh, look at the little pumpkin out. Look at the pumpkin seeds in there. And all of a sudden you realize they all have legs.
Yeah. That's
So,
weird.
but, yeah.
Well, now, when you came back, tell us about you coming back.
Well, when I came back, what was cool about coming back for me, well, first of all, let me say going back, when we were out and coming back, for about 10 months, we were out everywhere all over the countryside. And when I came back to Phan Rang, when I left there, it was like a swamp. When I came back, there were barracks, there were showers, there were roads, there was a PX.
The trains.
There was a PX. It was just, you go, what the heck is going, how did that happen? So it was such a different thing. But then I think we spent about a month there, but we went out, they sent us out there. And one of the interesting things from going out there was I got to fly gunner on a helicopter one time. And, a lot of times, when you're taking off in those helicopters, you're looking and you're so overloaded, you just look up front and you see all the red lights are blinking, you figure, oh crap. First of all, I don't know how I could sit on those helicopter doors at 200 and 300 feet. Yeah. When I look at those little spaces now when I go to those air shows, and I go, how in the hell did I do that? I can't believe I was sitting on a floor with the helicopters turning. But I flew a gunner with this guy one time, with these people one time, and they were going from thing, and you remember they used to have free fire places where planes could drop their bombs, artillery could just shoot anything they wanted to. And I had the headset on because I was wearing the helmet because I was a gunner, and you realize these are little 18, 19-year-old boys who just were out in race cars or flying these helicopters because the one guy's going, well, you think we should go through there? There's a free fire zone. Hell, who cares? Let's just go through there. And you realize these are just
crazy,
kids.
those helicopters.
They're just crazy kids flying these things. And I loved the countryside of Vietnam because especially when you went in helicopters down through the river valley, you'd follow a river to wherever you were going, and it was so lush and so beautiful. It was a beautiful country. If it wasn't so hot, too bad it's so hot because it was so. Well, that's why it's so lush because it's the jungle. But not a lot of the times I was in jungle. When we went into the valleys, we were in jungle. But a lot of times we had like forests where we were.
Yeah. You remember the monsoon season?
I do remember the monsoon season. Sure. I was in Turuan where most of that happened.
You get wet and just stay wet.
I remember landing, going somewhere one time, and we got in there late, and we couldn't dig in. And you're lying there with that poncho, and that rain's just soaking you, and you just got your rifle sticking out one end of the poncho, and that pouring rain's coming down, and you don't know where the hell you are, and you don't know what kind of security you're into, or who's out there, or what's going on, and It's a strange feeling.
It is a strange feeling.
It's a strange feeling.
No sense in taking off your wet stuff because all you do is get. We used to put the tops up on the Jeep for about the first day, and then after that, didn't do any good. So it all blew in on the sides. So, man, it was
you had tops for Jeeps?
Yeah, we did. We did.
That's what gets me. You're getting when we do. When we go to our forward base camps, there might be a couple of Jeeps and a truck or something like that to be able to bring stuff in. Because they would, where we'd go, they just throw that steel metal down for the C-130s to land on. Because it would be jungle. They'd cut out a patch out of the jungle and then we'd land it.
Amazing how you could land those big planes.
Oh my God! I know.
Yeah.
And take off on them.
Yeah.
And but they would bring in some trucks and some Jeeps and stuff. That's to ferry supplies from wherever they were bringing supplies to the to the areas. So, but. We never really had any covered Jeep. I never saw a covered Jeep.
Well, I had about 70 and 71 that had covered Jeep.
Really? Yeah, that's what you wonder about these guys now, because what protected you from those mines in the roads then were a couple of sandbags in the bottom of the Jeep. It really wouldn't do you any good because you'd go by and you'd see a Jeep blown to hell.
Blown up, yeah. Well, now tell me about coming back. So you came back.
So I came back.
Seattle, Tacoma, is that where it was in... It's either McGuire or McCord Air Force Base.
I'm not sure where it was, but it was Seattle. And, you come back. Well, first of all, when I came back, I went to Cameron Bay, which was the big, it'd become gigantic by that time.
Sure.
And when we came into Cameron Bay, there was just thousands of guys, it seemed like, trying to get back to the States, because you have to hook up to get a ride back. And being that I was in the 101st, the sergeant comes up to me and goes, "You're in the 101st? Follow me." He got me. I was like there for half a day, where guys had been there for a week, because they were treating us special because we were like they considered us an elite force, I guess, or something like that. So by the way, they don't teach you how to survive better as a paratrooper. I thought you'd get some specialized trick training, but you don't get any trick training.
You're more. Just learn how to come out of an airplane.
You're more fodder to go into where it's really dangerous.
Well, were you promoted while you were over there?
I became an E4, yeah.
Okay.
I came out of basic. I became I think a private, I guess, E3. Most people were E2s. I was one of the 4 guys who got a stripe coming out of basic training, and then when I got to Vietnam, I got a kind of a funny story. Are we running out of time? But when you come off a relay or come out of the jungle and all that sort of stuff, you're all sweaty and you haven't washed for a week or two. And when
you lose a lot of weight.
Oh, yeah, I did. I see pictures of me now and I go, holy moly. When I came back in, I had this. I was a Southern kind of guy, and I had a black sergeant who was our 2 guy. Who was, you'd see him every once in a while. Most of the time he was just drinking, and because he was always in the rear area. But he didn't like me, and when I came back, I immediately went over to the constant, the barbed wire, and I took a pee on the barbed wire. And I didn't realize that they had just put an order out that you're not supposed to pee on the barbed wire. The old barbed wire, that you have all over the place. So he made me go out and dig a foxhole just for punishment. Uh-huh. So that his sergeant, or the other sergeant that was in control, because most of the time we were out in the jungle, we were the guys in charge. But when you were back in the forward base area, you had people in charge, the sergeants, because they would never go out. So that guy was a Southern guy, and when he found out that guy had punished me for pissing on the wire, he gave me an E4 strike just to throw it in his face.
Ain't that something?
Yeah.
How you got promoted, huh?
Yeah, I got promoted for breaking the rules. As I also got saved from not crashing an airplane from breaking the rules. So, yeah. All
right, so when you came back?
We came into Seattle, and I think it was Fort Lewis. And pretty much, they said, "Do you want to re-enlist?" And if you said no, and I didn't want to re-enlist. So, because I just wanted to experience, combat, kind of like I wanted to really understand what it was all about. Pretty much, they say, "Well, there's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out." I always thought they'd take some blood or see if you had any tropical diseases or give you a physical or something like that. But pretty much, it says, "There's the door. Get out." And when I got back, I went down to San Francisco because there was a guy that one of my friends got wounded, and he was down in Presidio, I thought. And when I got down there, which is strange. First of all, you're like. Before you're coming out of the jungle, and all of a sudden you're into this country where there's cars and you can catch a bus, and you don't have to have a weapon with you all the time, and it's such a strange transition that it takes a while to get adjusted to it.
The guys that coming back now, the heroes welcome they get.
It's so different.
Oh, it is so, and I envy that. When I got home, when I finally got back to my home. my family was there to welcome me and all that, and so I got the welcome there. But coming back to the United States, and people calling us names and things like that, man, I thought, that's unfair. I just doing my duty.
Right.
And, that's kind of stuck with me for a long time.
Well, for years you have to, when I came back, I 67, it wasn't as bad as it got to be later on. But when I came back and I went back to, first of all, I went to San Francisco, and then I flew to Denver, and I caught a Greyhound bus to Memphis just to try to acclimate to the country again, to feel America again. So I took a Denver all the way to Memphis, Tennessee on a Greyhound, and got a feeling for it. And then when you get back and you got your old friends, and they're doing that weird talk, how many people did you kill and all that kind of stuff like that. That's kind of weird too. And, it's innocent on their part. They have no concept. They're just curious and all that sort of stuff. But it takes a while to adjust. I had to go out and buy a rifle. I mean, I couldn't sleep at night without having a rifle next to my rifle, because I had slept with an M16 so much that I felt naked without one. And and then you have that problem of, you're walking around, you hear a loud noise. You're going for the ground, and people are looking, what the hell's wrong with that guy?
Sure.
So it takes a while, and then I went up to Chicago. I stayed in Memphis for about 6 or 7 months, which was a strange adjustment time. And then I actually went up to the '68 convention in Chicago just to see what it was about, kind of like. So I was up there, and then I stayed up in Chicago for the next 40 years, I guess. And back in those days, there was a lot of protests going on. I remember being on this one after the convention. I wasn't involved with all the riot. I was down there when it was just people were just milling around and getting high and stuff like that. But I was in a bar on Wells Street, which was like a hippie area at that time. Mm-hmm. And right after the '68 convention, the Weathermen formed, and the Weathermen hit that street, and they were running down that street, breaking windows and all that sort of stuff. I remember the bartender pulled out a .38 and said, "They come anywhere close to this place, they're getting shot." So yeah, and then there was all that communism, and I went to a couple of those communist meetings and all that sort of stuff, and you realize, I hate communists. They're the most elitist, people-hating people in the world. The leaders, the ones that are trying to, the leaders, they have no use for the common man. They think the common man, they want to be like the old bishops and the kings, where the common man has to bow down to them, kind of like. That's what they were going for. So yeah, because in basic training, I'd actually gotten into an argument with a drill instructor about communism, because I was saying, I'd read a book about the French in Indochina, and I was saying, I was kind of leaning towards the communist thing a little bit, and I said, the army is like communism. Why are you fighting communism? Because you're in the army, and it's kind of like the same thing. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. But once I found out the real people behind the communist movement, I realized,
one last question. You had several years now since your Vietnam experience.
Uh-huh.
What are your feelings?
Well, I'm of the mind. First of all, when I was there.
Now, how old are you now?
67.
Okay,
so,
and you went over Vietnam, and you were
like 20, 21, something like that.
So you came back when you were 21, 22,
something like that.
Okay.
And when I basically was against the North Vietnamese army and sort of stuff like that. But there's one area that we went into up by Chu Lai where the Marines had been. There was just, most of the people liked us because we were the first ones in there. The Vietnamese did, or we got along with them pretty good. But when we went up to Chu Lai, I think they call it like some kind of iron triangle or something up there. Mm-hmm. That was the first area I'd been into where you could tell the people despised us. They hated us. Now, I don't know if it was because of the Marines and what the Marines had done to them or what, but we were usually usually the first ones in there. But and that place was just unbelievably tunneled. I went into some of those tunnels. You couldn't believe those tunnels up there.
Those are crazy.
You go into a tunnel,
yeah,
and there's a room the size of a bedroom in those tunnels. I couldn't believe it. So that was the only place that I really, but most of the time I really loved the Vietnamese people. I did feel sorry for them because they were caught in the middle. And I felt sorry for that. At the same time, I realized they didn't want to be communist. And when I look back on it, I always wish they would have, maybe gone. I know they were worried about World War III and all that sort of stuff. But I wish they would have gone into the North Vietnam and stopped them. Although they seem to be doing good. I talk to people that go over there now, and like Highway 1 is like a super freeway now. And the development is really good, and everything's working out for them. Of corruption is still rampant, I'm sure, because that's the way that those third world countries are. But my time, you know, I wanted to experience it, and I couldn't imagine going through life if there was a war or something like that. The intense emotions that you have in a war, and especially if you're in a combat situation, is something that you'll never forget, and I can't imagine as a man not ever wanting to experience, to be honest with you. Now, I was kind of an adventurous guy, you know, because I hitchhiked out to California when I was a kid. I rode a bicycle from Chicago to Florida. So I was kind of an adventurous kid, so maybe that has something to do with it. But you know, I just don't understand. And I know there's fear, and you know, the only thing that's bad about war, dying is not the problem. It's being wounded, and I feel sorry for these guys.
Everybody hated that.
I feel sorry for these guys now. You know, I feel like they'd be much better off just dying instead of being brought back with, you know, 2 or 3 limbs missing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if that's so good that they've advanced their saving them so well that I don't know. I mean, I think it is. Obviously, when you're with a guy who's dying, he doesn't want to die, no matter how bad off he is. He's supposed, please don't let me die. But you know, it's over with. You know, we all got to die. Whether you die young or old, it doesn't make too much difference. But yeah, I'm glad I experienced that emotion of what it was like and the adjustment that you have to go through when you come back to the real world, as we used to say. Yeah. And realizing that most people have no concept whatsoever about it.
Sure.
And the crowds I ran with, I never really was with another person that was in the military. I worked at a place one time the man I was working for, his son got killed there. And I felt sorry for him because I could tell that he got killed in a bunker, you know, where they threw a satchel charge in and did it. And you could tell the sadness in this man. The parents who lost their kids, it must have been devastating for them. And I also worked at a place where a woman had lost her brother, and you could see the sadness that was in their existence, so to speak, that this thing had been taken away from them. So the evils of war are unbelievable, but you know, they've always been there, and you always have to adjust, and it's just part of life. I mean, you don't go through life easy. It's a hard thing, and I always look back on World War II, and I think, my God, the pain and agony that those people here and the guys that went over there had to live through. It's unbelievable.
Well, let me tell you, I have a sense, and I'm sure you do too, of having served my country. And that's always a special sense to me, patriotism. And I always have a special, when the flag's raised, then...
Well, I always feel about the people who have given their life. You know, and that's what gets me. I mean, when I was in basic training, when they played taps, I'd start tearing up because taps is such an unbelievable emotional thing.
Yeah,
you know,
it does get down emotion.
It does. It's just it's a tear-welling thing. So that's what I feel when I see the flag and I see things like that. I think about the people who have died, and a lot of people have suffered for it. Not, you know, their families.
Yeah.
And
kids grew up without.
Well, where I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, there was a street called Getwell, and it was called Getwell because there was a big VA complex there, hospital there. I mean, it was gigantic. They've turned it into a campus now, and it was all World War II guys that had been injured and stuff like that. We used to volunteer in there, and you saw some terrible wounds and stuff like that. And that was years later. And I was with a woman one time, and her father, who had been in World War II, he had, you know, you hear about PDS, or whatever they call it now, post-traumatic syndrome.
Stress, yeah.
Those are the guys who would have it, if you ask me, because and she had said that her father always had that. And you do have those dreams, but you know, you have the dreams, just live with them. Is the way I look at it. You know, why let something that happens to you destroy your life? Is the way I look at it. If you're alive and breathing, move on. Put it in a box and keep on going. It doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do you any good to be reliving it. You know, and I hate the guys who use that experience as an excuse, because there's a lot of guys who go into the military who have problems to begin with, and that, you know, that they either breaks them or they don't survive those problems. It's problems that put them in those situations, you know.
Well, Jeff, thank you.
Thank you. Whoops. Same here.
God bless you, man. Are we okay?
Oh, yeah.